Good morning, everyone. This is Stephen Khuong along with Natalise and Jess Unlikely Journey. I was talking to Jess earlier today, and she had mentioned that we should reflect upon some of the things that we've all done in the physical realm and how those activities transfer into discipline and how it has helped us with our careers professionally now. Jess, you want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting to think about, just like the type of discipline you get from playing a sport. Like I was always very artsy, and my parents had a rule I always had to be on a team sport, and I probably never would have chosen that for myself. But looking back, I'm really glad that I'm glad they made me do that because I had to learn how to get along with people in different situations. Like we're on a team, when like the heat gets cranked up, like you're kind of just in it. And preach like things like we would do preseason training. I was like a pretty good soccer player in high school, and I was on all these different teams like select and travel and blah blah blah, and on varsity. And they we would meet to train before preseason because we knew how hard preseason was, and that wasn't our coach making us train. It was us realizing we didn't want to be in as much pain as we were going to be in if we just after a summer of doing nothing like tried to like suffer through preseason. So we would literally meet in the park and run, and not everybody, like the starters and the people that I think did really well. And I guess that's like interesting to ask you guys, like, because I think the other thing too is like it's great to be part of sports, but it's also how you apply yourself. I find that like how I applied myself then and how I apply myself now and push through that pain and a little bit of that foresight to get myself in like quote unquote fighting shape for things. It's a mentality that I feel like definitely saves my ass in what I do now.
I'd say, I had definitely like a different upbringing than you. Like my parents did not care if I did sports or not. Um, but I think I did join the track team, and I was doing dance and whatever. And I honestly, like, there were times when I just hated it. But you know what it taught me was that because sports is so like just physical activities, it's so obvious like where you fall like in the ranking, right? Like it's harder to do that in things that are not so obvious. But I think for me it was like, okay, like I'm not as um like I was a late bloomer, so like as a kid I was just not as coordinated um as I am now. It's like it's very strange that it happened that way, and like I was just not good. And I knew that I had to work harder to get what people got kind of right away. um and it taught me sort of like just hard work in like a different way. What about you, Steve?
Yeah, my journey was unique in the sense that I've always been very active, coordinated. I remember being in kindergarten or the first grade, and I was like in love with Bruce Lee movies. So I would just like be able to do all these roundhouse kicks and straight kicks and jump kicks and all of these things. And then I got into BMX, flatland freestyling. Everything came really, really easy to me in terms of physical activities. But then in when I was 12, I got Guillain-Barré syndrome and I was paralyzed for a number of years. And that pretty much changed everything. It wasn't until my junior year of high school where I was able to get back into anything that was more than just like walking. So my high school gym teacher, God bless her, she was really the one that got me into believing mind over body. So she taught me how to lift weights, join track, do all these things to really push the limits of what the body's capable of doing. So ever since then, I've really been using fitness, sports, competitive sports as an avenue to demonstrate to myself what the human potential can be. So I think about sports not only as a means to develop discipline, but also an outlook for what's possible in the universe.
I love that, Steve. That's awesome.
Super cool. You guys got me thinking. Like, I was listening to a podcast actually earlier this morning, and they were talking about like the Simone Biles, like like issue with like, her like, citing mental health and needing to take a step back from, competing. And it got into this interesting topic of like mental fitness versus like, say like mental illness or, like, having,
Totally.
yeah. So I feel like, I don't know, like Steve, like what you're describing sounds like mental fitness, right? Like where like you had to figure out, like I can't even imagine what you went through, like having to learn to walk again, and then where you are now, where it's like, you have all. If you guys don't follow Steve on social media, you should, because he's like vaulting himself up by his arms and making it look like he weighs like 5 pounds, and then he's effortlessly like, doing like pull ups, chin ups, and all these different things. So like to come from where you came from, where you had to kind of relearn to walk, and then doing that and having a series of gyms and all the kettlebell stuff, like, like how do you guys feel about like this concept of like of mental fitness and like, I mean, I guess Steve, you answered this question, but like Natalise, like for you, like how do you feel that fitness like plays in general to like mental fitness, like physical activity?
Well, it's interesting. Like something that I was just thinking about this morning was how there was a guest speaker that came into a class at the GSB, and he's a CEO, very successful, sold a company, et cetera, et cetera. But he was talking about mental fitness, right? And he's like, look, like you guys believe in trainers, right? Like that's an okay thing to do. Like that's something that's super acceptable. People pay a lot of money out of pocket for it, like whatever. He's like, so why don't we think about mental fitness the same way as we do physical fitness? And obviously, this was a class, uh, quite a few years ago before sort of COVID and everything, and sort of mental health has sort of, has trended up, and I think has become more acceptable for sure. Um, but I think, yeah, I think this mental fitness aspect of our lives is equally important to maintain and to make sure we're optimizing all the time, right? And they're all related. It's like your physicality helps your mental, your mental health. Your mental health helps your physicality. Um, just in terms of science based health, right? So um, it's definitely been top of mind for me.
Yeah, it's important to remember that the body and the mind are not siloed. I think most of us tend to believe that physical fitness is a conditioning practice to make the body really strong. But if you think about what actually happens when you're running or lifting weights or doing anything that's strenuous, the body is actually sending signals and chemicals back to the brain. So there's a bilateral means of communicating between the software and the hardware. And I think that's really important to understand. So for me, mental fitness and physical fitness are two components of a whole. They're not separated. In other words, you can't really have, in my opinion, true mental fitness if you're not physically fit, and then vice versa.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely on board with sort of this holistic view, right? I mean, even in what we do at Parallel when we're thinking about the microbiome, right? We deal with the skin microbiome, but certainly, we're always, kind of in tune with what's happening in the gut microbiome. And now there's research, that, and Steve, you may have read this as well, and Jess too, but essentially your gut microbiome, when it's producing, bacteria that shouldn't be there, it can literally affect the health of your brain and hence your mental health. And there is a connection between your gut microbiome and your mental health. And so, and your gut microbiome, right, is affected by your diet. So that's another component that we haven't yet touched on, but then also your physicality and what you're doing to keep your body healthy, as you said, the hardware.
Yeah, they say your gut is your second brain.
Yeah, and I think it also like, like bringing up all of that as well. It's like I think that athleticism is an easier maybe entree into this, because like, I'm going to play a soccer game tonight. Like if I don't plan out eating enough or drinking enough water before I go play, I'll feel it, right? And you know I think it's the same thing, like waking up in the morning and knowing you have like a really busy day with meetings, and like, like how do you feel your body? Like do you like, do you take vitamins? Do you have coffee? Like for me, it's matcha. Like, I think that there's this element of conditioning that's like, I think having the mentality of that somewhat of a sports background, for me at least, has made it a little bit easier to kind of understand that, like, yeah, all of it is kind of conditioning your mind and also like adapting these healthy habits that like help you. Like if I eat the wrong thing by 4 or 5 o'clock, I'm exhausted. And I know most people are probably tired by 4 or 5 after work, but I'm like usually good to go until about like 7 or 8 on a pretty long day. If I wake up and do the right things and have protein at certain times of the day, like I mean, how do you guys look at your days in terms of that type of stuff?
I'm a little bit less sensitive to the food regimen. I guess I'm blessed because of that. I know a lot of my friends are just similar to what you've described, which is they have to be very regimented with their dietary intake, otherwise they'll crash. Again, I'm fortunate I don't really fall into that category. However, I tend to do something a little bit different where I'm like overly optimistic. So like when I'm in the game or when I'm doing my workouts, oftentimes I will push the threshold a little bit more than where it should be, and then I end up paying the price later. So for me, it's about dialing it down. And again, the food thing, I suppose you're right. I can maybe optimize that a little bit more and get better results. But for sure, the sticking point for me is like, I gotta make sure that my brain doesn't believe it can push the body to do something that it shouldn't do.
Oh, that's interesting. So you've almost like went the other way. Like you've gotten so good at it that you got to dial it down. But you know what, Steve? It's funny because it's like, so I played a little bit of sports. I was on the track team, like whatever, and but I wasn't like ever super competitive with sports. Like I didn't have like the fire that some people have like around sports. I didn't
Right.
actually get that until I started training with you. And that was like later in my life, right? This was after high school. Um, and when I trained with you guys at the ice chamber, I mean, like you guys pushed us hard. And I remember it's funny because I mean, I know you in that context as well, like as this. And like, um, I just my what stays with me about you is that you are so like mind over matter because that's what you preach. Like you practice it and you preach it. And I don't think I've ever worked harder in my life like than at Ice Chamber, like physically.
Yeah, I remember those days. It was great. But hey, Natalise, it wasn't just you. I saw it in your mom too. I don't know if you guys know that. So Natalise would come and her mom would come. And Natalise, your mom, she was incredible. Talk about mind over matter, right? If you see Natalise's mom, you're like, there's no way that this woman is going to be doing all this stuff. But yeah, she does it. And again, that's a perfect example of how like you can't really judge a book by its cover, right? The mind is so powerful. If injected with the right type of stimulus, we can do anything. I really believe that. The human body is still evolving. As a human species, where we are today is much different than where we were, say, 1,000 years ago, or even 500 years ago. You know,
Yeah,
it's
for
true.
sure.
Well, think about the 5-minute mile. Remember, like, hundreds of years ago, that was almost impossible. But people are like, that's nothing, like a high school track athlete can do that now, right?
Yeah. No, I think about it all the time, like about how we're constantly pushing boundaries and like the next generation of people, the next generation of players, even like year to year, they're like constantly pushing boundaries. And we're like, you know, what was fast like 20 years ago is like nothing. Like now, and that
Totally.
I think carries over like in all sports. And in my mind, I'm thinking like, will we ever hit like a limit or will we just continue to evolve? And maybe the answer is that we just continue to evolve.
I think we're going to continue to evolve because what happens is that communities look at social norms, and social norms then become the baseline of what you want to overcome. So again, if you think about the 5-minute mile, I don't know, 200 years ago, that was like, holy shit, that's really, really fast. Today, it's just so common. If you're a competitive high school athlete, you're just like, nah, I'm going to go 4 minutes, 3:30, whatever the number may be. There's going to be a kid out there that says it's possible. There's a cliche. There's like a meme out there, I think, that shows the word impossible. And if you break it in half, right, into two words, it says I'm possible. So it depends on how you're looking at the situation. I mean, I can say this across all sports. The 100-meter sprint, baseline reference time for like national record is many times better than the world record 100 years ago, for example. Look at basketball players. I mean, my God, I mean, the physicality that these players are exhibiting now versus what was happening in the 60s. Huge. Gymnastics. Look at the look at the levels of difficulties now just to make it to nationals versus what they were grading gymnasts on in the Olympics in say like the 60s. Huge. So I think as a human species, we're so adaptive that we're going to continue to evolve. Now, what we're going to look like as a species, like physically, that's going to be trippy because I think in order to adapt to some of these new records, the body's going to have to change drastically. So that's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I was just thinking about like how, this is a totally different topic, but how people think that, we're just gonna be like half robots, half humans at some point.
Oh, that's a trip.
All of
That's
our
interesting.
nano bionic nanotechnology.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, again, that could be the norm of the future where like high level athletes are hybrids, right? Half nano, half, we're like the what was that movie? The Terminator. Remember those the different versions of the Terminators?
Yeah, but not even far off. If you look what they're doing with like gene splicing and stem cell stuff, with like helping to like re-inject your cells back into like say a knee that needs help or that needs repairing. Like, I think like that stuff. I mean, the yes, the bionic stuff is going to be coming, but also this idea of genetic enhancements. I don't think, and we're already seeing it.
What do you guys think about individual sports versus group sports in terms of competitiveness? Do you guys see a difference between the two? I have some thoughts around that, but I'd love to hear yours first.
Yeah, I mean, I think individual sports it's a mental game, like you said. Like you are competing against yourself. Only you can like, you know, push you, push you over. Um, I think with group sports, it's like a company, right? Like I liken it to like a company, like you have a role, people are depending on you, you have to play your role well, and you have to be able to communicate with your team. I don't know. That's how I think about it. I don't have as much experience with group sports. I kind of wish I had because I think it would have taught me a lot about, you know, about being in a company too.
Yeah, I agree with that. What I think is really valuable in individual sports is that excuses are removed, right? So you can't say like so and so didn't pass the ball. No, you're by yourself. You're like running, unless lightning strikes and hits you, there are very little excuses or no excuses. So I think there's something to be said about that. What I've seen happen in group sports is that, for what it's worth, people bitch about each other. So and so didn't do this, this should have happened. I've I don't think I've ever done team sports. Most of my sports have been individual sports. So yeah, I can't speak from the perspective of a comparative study because I don't think I've done group sports before. But Jess, what are your thoughts?
Well, I was gonna say too, like about like the bitching at each other. It's like you kind of like it's like that happens anytime you have more than one person in a room, right? Like you put two people in a car and they disagree on directions or shortcuts. Like I don't know. I personally like I've done solo sports before. Like I played golf. I've definitely more competitively. I know I did martial arts growing up. Like that's like we did. I was part of some groups where we did flipping and sparring, but for the most part, it was like that's a solo sport. Like you learn your moves and like your forms and versus like soccer, which I still play. I don't know. Personally, I feel like I get pushed harder when I play a team sport because in a similar way where you're like, there's no excuses if it's just yourself. Like you're really being like, you also can't set the pace, right? So you're on a field and someone kicks the ball. Like you have, it's all excuses aside. Like it's not all. You're just being pushed. You're constantly being stretched with your own limit to like lead the team or to at least not be the weakest link in the team. And I guess it depends on the type of team sport, but like in a game like soccer that I play, like when someone's like needs to get called out, or a ball's going to a certain side, or like, or sometimes you cover for someone else. You see someone's limping a little bit, or they're hurt, and like you find it in you to sprint a little faster and cover that ball for them, or I don't know, it kind of like, at least for me, it takes me out of myself. When I'm on the field, like I'm not thinking, I'm showing up and I want to be the best I can be. We want to, of course, win the game, but there's like almost like a little bit of a higher calling, because you're part of a group that, everyone on that field should be ideally at best. It's a little different with rec, but at best you're on that field and everyone should be playing full out.
What great insight. I really appreciate that, because now I'm thinking about military warfare as a sport. Absolutely can do it solo, but for the most part, winning battles and overcoming the war is about that team mentality. So thank you for raising that perspective, Jess. That's really good.
Well, yeah, and I think also like the interesting thing is like you don't have to get along with everybody to do the thing you're there to do, right? So like I don't have to be best friends with everyone on my team for us to be a good soccer team. We just have to like respect each other on the field, and we have to know
Mm.
each other's strengths and weaknesses, and it's not, we can win every game and still not be best friends off the field.
No, you're right. You're totally right. It's that mutual respect.
Well, let me ask both of you guys this question. How has your experience in sports, or let's just call it competitive fitness to an extent, helped you, or maybe it hasn't helped you with your career path?
I think for me, I think it's helped me run teams a little better. It's helped me um,
How so?
well, you just like, it's like kind of what I just mentioned. Like, you kind of have to look at everyone's strengths and weaknesses, right? And if there's a goal, you kind of, I think about it like a field. I think about it like soccer players. Like, what's your personality? Are you a striker? Are you defense? Are you like, you learn to kind of really quickly understand someone's personality and aptitude. And I definitely feel like that's one of my strengths in what I do, like whether I'm, in the company where I'm running my own teams, or like when a creative project pops up and I'm hiring people, like I feel like one of my spidey strengths is kind of looking for, people's interests and aptitude, and being able to kind of coordinate people on that level. And then on a physical, in a physical way, like I think just learning to be uncomfortable and okay with feeling uncomfortable and pushing myself and my physical limits. I think that it helps. Like if I wake up and I'm stressed or I have anxiety, like it's nice to like know that if I work out, I don't know, having that thing to kind of like get a little bit of tension out, like, it's contrary action. Like I might just want to sit down and start working right away, but I realize if I, do jumping jacks and run around the block, like that I'm going to have, a different mindset just from moving my body and being active.
Yeah, I mean, sports I think has kept me humble. Like I I graduated at the top of my class in high school. Like I was really like, for better or worse, like really, really pushed myself on the academic side. Um, and there was a lot of stress there. And then the sports was just something that I tried and I did, and it kept me humble because I was not good at it. And it made me work hard. Um, and I knew what it was like to be like, you know, kind of at the bottom of the totem pole, like when it came to like ranking. So it's like, okay, if I want to get better, like I got to push myself. I got to do this. I got to put in time. I have to think differently about this. I have to reset my expectations. And so I think for me, it was good in that, um, it just made me work in a different way than I was used to on something that didn't come as easily. Um, and then I think just from a mental health perspective, now it's like I go on runs and I go on walks and I try to, and dance and all of that. Like when I mean now, like when I go into a dance class, it's like I'm definitely not the best dancer in the room, but I love it. And I put in the time. And so, um, and at the end of the day, it keeps me balanced, just from a mental health perspective.
I'd like to learn a little bit more about what you guys are doing as a regimen. What's your weekly regimen, Jess, for physical fitness?
I things are about to get better for me because the leagues just started up, and it's really hard for me to work out by myself unless someone's screaming at me or there's a ball or there's like a reason for me to be like playing full out like that, at least with like, sports. So I'm working out. But I have this thing where I do like at least 7 minutes every day. And I know it sounds like nothing, but it's like, it's just high intensity stuff where I put on a minute and I do jumping jacks really fast, or I'll do squats or knee lifts and, like planks and things like that. And so that's like my daily. And then I hike a couple mornings a week. I meet up with people and I bring my dog out, and it's great to just get some fresh air and exercise and a little perspective and be social with some friends. And then, yeah, now that the leagues are starting back up, I'll be playing soccer a couple of days a week. But I always wake up and try to do at least 7 minutes of something just when I first wake up, like stretch and jumping jacks and get my body moving. And then, yeah, I'm alternating right now between the sports and hiking and things like that. What about you guys?
Well, before we go to me or Natalise, I know recently you've purchased like a VR set to do
Oh yeah, I forgot.
virtual gaming. Do you
Yes, I did.
do you still do that?
Yeah, yeah, actually, thanks for reminding me. Yeah, I just realized I was watching on Netflix at night. I live alone, so, me and my dog would just like curl up on the couch, and I was never like a couch potato in my life for evenings. I was usually out and about. So, yeah, I bought the Oculus, and I've been playing Beat Saber, and then I just bought this weekend, I bought like a ping pong game, and I bought what's the other one? This like it's like a racket tennis cyber thing, and yeah, it's fun. Like that. If I'm restless at night, I try to play that because it takes me into a little bit of another planet. And again, I'm like, I get to zone out, but I'm not zoning out on a couch, kind of half paying attention while I'm checking my email. So it like gives me a little bit of that immersive quality that I think I really appreciate, when I'm like playing, sport. So yeah, thank you for reminding me. The
That's
Oculus, I've
awesome.
really been enjoying that. That's what I'm doing at night, you guys,
That's
by myself,
amazing.
playing with robots at midnight.
I love it.
Natalise, are you into the VR fitness thing as well?
I haven't. So obviously Shane, my husband, he works in VR, and so he does it just because, it's part of, what he should do. And so it's funny because I'll walk in and he'll be working out like doing VR, and I just kind of smile like and then close the door. Like I just think it's funny. No, I haven't done the VR thing. I you know, for me, especially during COVID, it's just I want to be outside as much as possible. So I'll do an hour hike or walk in hills, or I'll run every day for at least anywhere from 40 to 60 minutes. Um,
7 days a week?
yeah,
Wow.
usually. I mean, maybe I'll skip a day if I'm really, really busy, but and that does happen like once in a while. But yeah, usually I'll try to keep that going. Even when Shane and I were traveling, and we were, during COVID, we quarantined for, a couple weeks in like Bend, Oregon, and we still, we did the walks every day. Um, um, I haven't danced as much, which it makes me super sad. But it's just not the same. Like dance class is so much more energetic and so much more fun than, dancing by yourself. Like,
Right.
and so I haven't done that, but I hope to get back to that if we can ever get out of this craziness that is COVID.
Yeah, when we get out of it, let me know about your dance classes because I'll come join you.
Oh yeah, that'd be
Yeah,
amazing.
that'd be super fun.
I mean, in the meantime, at least you could dance with robots. That's kind of,
That's true.
Yeah. I
you know,
have played that Dance Saber. What is it? The
mhm.
Saber one on VR. Like
Beat
that was fun.
Saber. Beat
Beat
Saber.
Saber. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they have
That's
dance
hilarious.
ones where you mimic. I mean, they don't for the Oculus at home. It's really intuitive. The handheld things you have, like you can make fists and you can pick things up with your foot, seem like your fingers. Like they just haven't like done the thing that like when we did Shane's demonstration, they had like also like the foot. I don't. It's kind of
Mm,
interesting. They haven't integrated that yet. Like it should just be easy to like tie something around your shoe or
yeah.
your ankle. But so that's where I think with the dance stuff, it's probably a little tricky. But yeah, they
Mm.
have some programs where you can bounce around and have some robot
Yeah,
friends like me.
I know. How about you, Steve?
Well, I have four options that I do on a weekly basis. The first one is to run anywhere between 2 to 6 miles several times a week. That's option one. The second one is to go to a public park and practice my pull up skills. So, a lot of calisthenics. The third one is to set a timer in my house for 20 minutes and just do as many burpees as I can. And then the
In
fourth
20
one,
minutes? Holy shit.
yeah, I just set the clock for 20 minutes. I mean, I don't go crazy, but I just keep going until the timer stops. The timer beeps, and then I stop. Yeah, it's actually, it's actually more manageable than you think. You just don't like try to kill yourself in the first minute. You just find your pace. I think about it as running uphill. As long as like there's momentum and there's no inertia, you're going to be okay. And then the last one, I just bought myself a set of portable dip bars. So I've been using those at home, and those are fun because you can do like inverted body rows, you can do dips, you can do L sits, all kinds of stuff. So those are my four options. I haven't used kettlebells in a long time, although I did get a little bit tipsy in Vegas after dinner and decided to like snatch a bunch of kettlebells, and that was really fun. But but other than that, it's mostly body weight stuff and running. And I'll tell you, I really am enjoying the simplicity of that. Not having to worry about having different dumbbells or kettlebells or weights or instruments or implements. It's just me, my body, and the environment. So, and I try to keep that up a minimum 4 times a week. If I'm lucky, I can do like 5 or 6, but usually four is enough.
And you know what, Steve, that's something that I always remembered from Ice Chamber when you would talk about sort of doing body weight stuff. And because I've had to travel so much, like in my adult life, I mean, I would work out in hotels in my hotel room and have an amazing workout just doing body weight stuff.
Oh yeah, I think body weight stuff is underrated, right? Just a simple push-up. People don't realize that the push-up is a full body exercise. It's not just the upper body. If you do a push-up right, your psoas muscles are activated, your glutes are activated, your quads are activated. So much core strength is involved in doing a proper push-up. And then not to mention, if you are doing push-ups at a good rate, then there's also tons of cardiovascular effect as well. So that's one example. Yeah, I can go on and on, but this conversation can go on for hours, but we have reached our limit this morning. I hope you guys have enjoyed our discussion on fitness and how that leads to discipline and mental health as well. We're going to sign out right now. Stephen Khuong here with Natalise and Jess. As always, wishing you guys a beautiful day and peace.